HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. The name itself tells us a lot. Human means that the virus infects humans specifically. There are other viruses that act similarly to infect other species. Immunodeficiency means that the virus attacks the immune system, which is what makes HIV such a harmful disease. And virus means a microorganism that infects living cells. HIV is spread by sexual contact or by exposure to blood or sometimes breast milk from an infected person. So how does HIV infect human cells? Let's draw a cell here, and here's the nucleus. Specifically, this is a CD4 positive T cell, which is a very important cell type in the immune system. These cells have a specific receptor that HIV is able to bind to. As an aside, there are some people who have inherited a mutation that alters the structure of their CD4 cells, so HIV can't bind to them. These individuals are immune to HIV. And if HIV does get into the cell, eventually this cell will make new copies of HIV. It's a complicated process, and I'm not going to go through every step because I just want you to grasp the big concepts. But you might want to watch some videos on cellular organelles or protein synthesis if you aren't familiar with some of these terms. So if HIV gets into the blood, it can float around and then bind to this receptor here. HIV's envelope will then fuse with the membrane of the T cell and insert its contents. That includes HIV RNA along with 3 proteins, which I'll draw in different colors here so we can keep them straight. There's reverse transcriptase, integrase, and protease. This genetic material is going to get inserted into the cell's genome, but first it has to be converted from RNA to DNA. Now this RNA could just skip that step and get translated to make viral proteins directly, but if the viral RNA gets converted into DNA and then integrates into the host cell genome, then the host cell will make lots of copies of HIV RNA, and then from that make lots more copies of the virus. This process of making DNA is called reverse transcription, which is catalyzed by the first protein that HIV brings with it, reverse transcriptase. And it's called that because normally transcription goes from DNA to RNA, and here we're going from RNA to DNA. Then the second protein, represented by this aqua-colored dot, is integrase. Integrase will, as the name implies, integrate the viral DNA into the host DNA in the nucleus. From there, the machinery that normally replicates human DNA and makes proteins that the human cell needs now starts working on the viral DNA. So it produces viral proteins, and then all this gets packaged up to form new viral particles. That's how viruses in general work. They don't have what it takes to reproduce by themselves, so they have to take advantage of living cells' machinery. The viral particles will then bud off of the cell. So you can see the way that the virus gets out of the cell looks a lot like how it gets into the cell, just in reverse. But at this point, the viral particles are immature, and they won't be able to infect other T cells. That's where protease, the third protein here in purple, comes in to cleave the viral proteins to make them functional. So you can see here that there are many steps involved with HIV's life cycle that we can target with specific drugs. We could, for example, try to prevent HIV from getting into the cells in the first place, or we could inhibit protease to prevent the viral maturation, and so on. Now getting back to our picture here, this T cell will be damaged and will die, and the HIV particles will go on to infect other T cells. Over time, the number of HIV particles, or the viral load, goes up, and the number of CD4 cells, or the CD4 count, goes down. When the CD4 count is very low, the person is said to have AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. At this stage, the person has lost so many CD4 cells that it's hard for their immune system to fight off infections. They become susceptible to opportunistic infections. Opportunistic infections are infections that don't normally affect people with healthy immune systems. It's these unusual infections that end up killing people with AIDS, not the HIV itself.